Previously on Fish Chunk, I turned the farmhouse into a pop-up soup kitchen, and got rather well acquainted with the dairy churn, ticking off our level 48 cooking task, which I balanced out by adding a new task to the list, having decided that I would go for 55 magic after all. So I got busy with the bronze sim, as I hoarded up seeds and runes, making it all the way to 47 farming for some watermelons, and building this talkative fellow. And with that, we begin. You join me in a slight predicament. This grim noir version of Lumbridge is of course somewhere I'm not meant to be, so how has Fish Chunk screwed up this time? Well, as I begin the walk of shame back to Ardy, it's story time. Whereas regular Ironmen could just go and buy all their elemental runes from any old magic shop, Chunk accounts don't of course have that luxury, and despite being so important to low level training, these runes are actually fairly uncommon as drops for most mobs on the surface map. So rather than racing straight to the centre of the maze to loot the strange shrine for lots of chaos and death runes, many Chunk accounts instead choose to camp the smaller chests dotted around the map, which contain items like arrows, bolts, low level potions, and those all important elemental runes. If we had to sit around with our rewards potential ticking steadily down to 0 as we wait out the reset timer on every loot, then we'd only manage a couple of runes each time, and the whole thing would be rather pointless. So, fortunately, we have a way to stall that maze timer by leaving the dialogue box open on each loot, where the other timer for the chest reset continues to tick down in the background. Going further, we can world hop at the beginning of each maze random to find an optimal spawn closest to the small chest. And, by using free-to-play worlds, we can remove both attack and defense potions from the chest loot table as well, those being members items, thus increasing our chance of receiving runes with each search. Assuming that you entered the maze from a members area, all you have to do is hop back when the rewards potential ticks down to about 2% and you'll be fine. Knowing all of this, you might wonder how I messed up. Well, it's neither to do with ignorance nor forgetfulness, but simple cack-handedness. Piecing everything together, this is what I reckon has happened. Given the scale of the farming grind, I have quite a few different timers set up on Runelite to monitor my crops, which, when the plant is fully grown, give me a notification and request focus for the Runelite window, meaning that if you were, say, working on a Word document with Runelite open in the background, then should that notification go off, any keystrokes you make at the time will go to Runelite instead of Word. Not a problem, unless you've just reached the end of a word and hit the spacebar, which, as you quest enjoyers all know, will skip through any dialogue box, just like the one that was stalling our maze timer. And if in the flow of writing you then instantly click back to your Word document, opening it in front of the Runelite window once again, well, then you'll be none the wiser until you go back for the next chest loot when you'll find yourself stuck here. Anyway, as I got back it was about time to unload our first batch of super compost, made with the watermelons from last episode. For another little bit of farming tech here, you can in fact apply several batches of compost to each patch by working your way up through the tiers, starting with normal compost for 18 experience, followed by super compost for a further 26. There's no difference for the plant itself between doing this and just applying a bucket of super compost to begin with, but we want all the experience we can get, so whenever I plant a higher tier seed, like watermelons, I'll be doing just this. And of course, more watermelons means more fuel for the compost bin, creating more super compost, and so the cycle continues, being broken up only by a string of little milestones like 50 defense, 50 cooking, 50 attack, and 48 farming. Close enough. With the power of super compost though, I am at long last starting to see some quicker progress on that particular grind. Harvesting just these 2 patches of strawberries alone has brought in over 700 experience. You have to set your expectations fairly low for this type of account, okay? All that combat's adding up too. Here's our first protection prayer at level 37. Now, as if I haven't mentioned it enough, remember that we're doing all of this without a bank. So certain random events can be a real pain if we end up with a few of them awarding costume pieces from the same gear slot at the same time. So say hello to Stripey Chunk. Soon enough though, Leo rescues us with the opportunity to offload those spare items and a long-awaited XP lamp. Speaking of good random events, another one I'll never complain about is the Quizmaster, all because of his chance to give us Okay, really, this account has no right to be this fortunate. I've only had a handful of mystery boxes so far, so I was pretty delighted to see this item so early on. Just look at how much better it is than the bronze one we've been using so far. That was a 9 I just hit. Oh, and there's level 60 strength too. DPS wise, we're up to about 1.6 against guards, meaning a time to kill that's over 20% quicker than what we could manage before. There's still some nice loot to be had from mystery boxes in the future, like flinching weapons and rather generous piles of nature runes, thanks to its access to the rare drop table, but this is another one of those cases of risk-reward that you tend to get with Xtreme one-chunk accounts. Because lurking amongst those treats are some right stinkers, like a dragonstone, or heaven forfend, a rune bar. An item with the potential to add a several 100-hour grind in one fell swoop. Not something I fancy toying with, so depending on what mood I'm in, you might see me dismissing these in future. If you were wondering what was to become of the bronze sim, well, I can't be too sentimental about items with these restrictions, so a fitting send-off, I think. And to round off quite an eventful day on the account, there's level 50 farming too. Now, like I've said a couple of times, I was recording a good few weeks ahead of where I was up to with editing and uploads at the beginning, so at this point, episode 1 of Fish Chunk had only just been up for a couple of days, and it was now, only just after getting my myth sim, that the conversation about the magic grind started. To recap from last time, Limpwurt's very first version of the Xtreme rules, from the start of his own Lumbridge grind, excludes magic spells as tasks, for being non-chunk specific, so I did the same. Later on, however, he did add in the so-called utility spells as tasks, like with the Enchant Onyx Crossbow Bolt spell from his famous Puro grind. The version of the Xtreme rules on the Chunk Picker website were also designed with his input, and so, as a little integrity grind, I've added it back in. Something which wouldn't have affected my previous tasks anyway, having only just received air runes in the current chunk. Much like my little farming project, the goal might not sound like much. It's only level 55 after all, but that's until you crack out the calculator. So you all know what time it is. Presenting yet another over-engineered spreadsheet, this time covering rune drop rates, experience averages for damage spells, and casting ratios for optimal efficiency. Or, for short, Microsoft Expel. Let's start with the NPCs. Across our current chunk map, we find Goblins, who somewhat bizarrely have 2 different drop tables depending on how they're armed, one of which is our only source of water runes, along with a generous supply of body runes. Guards, who likewise are unique in providing a consistent source of air runes. And farmers with their slow but acceptable drops of mind runes, 9 at a time, at a rate of 1 in 64. There are a couple more interesting catalytic runes across the drop tables as well, like Nature, Chaos and even Blood runes, but the rates on those are all fairly pitiful. Factoring everything in then, between level 1 and 55 magic, that being our end goal for high alchemy, we have access to 17 different spells. With rune supplies being the real limiting factor here, the most important things to consider are the average experience per rune for each cast, the rate at which those runes can be obtained, and the number of different drop tables required for the various runes needed. Let's start by comparing the different strike spells, for instance. In terms of the base experience awarded on each cast, Fire Strike naturally comes out on top, meaning more experience per mind rune used. Since it also requires 2 air runes though, we'd end up spending far longer killing guards, to maintain our supply of those, than if we cast Earth Strike instead, which only needs the 1 air rune. Previously, Fire Strike would have had a higher max hit, meaning some additional magic experience per cast from the damage that it deals, but Jagex did away with that when they introduced the elemental weakness mechanic, and since no mobs in my chunk have a weakness to fire, Earth Strike still comes out on top. We do have 1 mob with a weakness to air spells though, those being the skeletons in the Temple of Ikov dungeon, just north of the fountain below the Ranging Guild. However, that only increases the max hit of Wind Strike from 8 to 10, leaving it on par with Water Strike and still below Earth Strike. When factoring in accuracy, overkill, the number of spawns and so on, we're still going to be better off casting our combat spells against cows than skeletons then. They have the same HP as the max hit of a strike spell, so after 1 cast, if I don't one-shot it, I can just melee it down so as not to waste any potential experience or runes. So what about the rest of the spells? Well, whereas Earth Strike gives us a paltry 8.75 experience per Earth rune on average, we can increase that to 10.5 experience per rune by casting Weaken, a spell using Earth, Water and Body runes, all of which, conveniently enough, feature on the unarmed Goblin drop table. They're quick to kill at only 5 HP each, and there's a ton of Goblin spawns near the Fishing Guild, so no waiting around for the respawn timer like with farmers. There's also no issue with accuracy here, since you get the same experience drop whether the spell splashes or not. And before someone comments it, yes, Curse does give more experience per cast, but it also requires 3 earth runes instead of 2, and with the earth runes being the least common of the drops, it's the one I'm basing my decisions around. So from my current level of 24 magic all the way to my goal of level 55, factoring in the rates across the different drop tables to work out the optimal ratio between the different spells, that works out to roughly 5,400 casts of Weaken, 4,200 casts of Water Strike, and 350 low alks, which, excluding lamps and mazes for the time being, would require a grand total of 72,000 goblins, 45,000 guards, and 30,000 farmers. Now, in reality, those numbers are pretty big overestimates. For one, by the halfway point at level 48 magic, the experience I gain from every single lamp will be the equivalent of using the runes from 220 goblins, 135 guards, and 90 farmers. But that's nothing compared to a maze though, which, assuming I can get about 90 loots from a small chest with each one, would save me another 1,000 goblin and 1,500 guard kills from the tally. So it is a long road ahead, one that's quite a bit more intimidating than the farming grind itself, now I come to think of it, but thanks to random events, nowhere near as bad as it could be. Using the Identificator and better NPC highlight plugins, I found the NPC IDs of each of the unarmed goblins in my chunks, and gave them a pretty highlight so that they would stand out. This is important since they're the only ones who drop water runes. Pause for the maze random. There's 150 air, 130 water, 80 earth, and 140 fire runes to the tally. From now on, I'll keep a little maze counter going for the rest of the episode to show you just how many runes they're bringing in. Anyway, back to goblins. We get an old favourite piece of headgear back. But we get interrupted by my farming timers. This is going to be a recurring source of annoyance during the grind, I suspect, since at level 1 agility, all that running back and forth from the patch to the goblins and between their spawn points is going to leave me walking quite a lot. But being so close to Ardy, with a log shortcut as our only way of reaching level 90 agility, there is no way I'm risking lamping that. Speaking of which, with the emote from that mime random, we're now one step closer to another source of lamps. The combat level is steadily ticking up as well. Here's 61 strength, bringing with it level 67 combat. I then decided to mark the spawn tiles for the goblins as well. With the right timing, there's a neat little loop that you can make around the area. Another maze. 180 airs, 130 water, 100 earth, and 40 fire runes. As well as helping to pull in the goblins, thus saving a bit of run energy, by casting Weaken and levelling up my magic skill as I go, I'm also helping to maximise the experience I get from every lamp, since their XP reward scales as you level up. Right on cue, there's level 28 magic, plus a bit of a useless random event, and an easy clue step just out of reach, trapped behind that log shortcut. And some of you might be wondering to yourself, but Fish Chunk, what about clue scrolls? They have some useful drops surely. And you'd be right. There's the potential to get a Staff of Air at a rate of 1 in 36 per loot roll on an easy clue. However, with there only being 2 easy steps that I can complete as of now, and the small problem of the 1 hour limit for clue juggling, I would have to jump out of mazes early every single time that I have more than 1 completable step in my possession. Giving up hundreds upon hundreds of elemental runes for that slim chance of landing a 3rd and 4th completable step, followed by needing the correct item from the reward roll, just isn't worth it. Instead, if and when I do get a step I can complete, I will likely just end up juggling it around the map as a token gesture, on the very slim chance that I get another few steps in short succession, or all the way until the chunk roll when I might get access to a few more steps. There is the added risk as well of getting a rainbow from the clue, at a rate of 1 in 1404, a cosmetic variant of the regular short bow that can be used at level 1 range, unlocking the grind to level 99 right off the bat, but we take those risks. Back to the patches, there's level 51 farming. And another big combat milestone, 40 prayer for protect from missiles. Plus I've maxed out the compost sack on our leprechaun again, meaning time to sell some more back to the shop. I'm only doing 30 per world at the moment, giving us 4,349 GP for 500 buckets. But the empty buckets themselves cost 500 GP for a pack of 100, and it takes nearly 39 hours for the compost bin to create that much, so we're looking at a rate of 47.6 GP per hour. A quick shout out to my clanmates in OSRS Advice for keeping me entertained on the grind as well. Mads here came to try and troll me with a stack of myth sims, but got a bit of a spoiler for this episode instead. There's another few pieces of the mime outfit. And an imp drawing a square. I'm not sure many of you will have seen how one of these Puro portals spawns. The first time I saw one I got really excited and thought a regular impling had somehow made its way into the chunk, bringing with it the chance of getting some flour for that garden pie, but it was not to be. Fortunately, with Puro locked behind level 17 Hunter and no way of training it for now, I'm spared from that grind for a little while. One skill I am training in the background though is of course fishing. Here's another Bob random, getting us up to level 13. But remember, we must not hit level 25 just yet, as the bait spots on the river in our adjacent chunks could mean killing farmers for bait all the way to level 68. If we had the Ardoyne sewers unlocked, then I wouldn't mind so much, as the zombies drop bait a lot more frequently, but the chunk map can be a cruel mistress, so I'm not counting on that. In hindsight, I probably should have avoided these randoms altogether until I hit level 51 magic, since at that point you get a 50% chance to receive 650 magic experience instead of fishing, which would come in rather handy, but I never thought that far ahead. Anyway, back to clues. Something rather strange happened next. Here's a medium step in our chunk, but it's inside the ranging guild. Seeing as the rewards from mediums aren't as helpful on our current grind, the only battle staff we can get being a fire one, I'm not overly fussed about losing this step on the next maze random. After a short break at the allotment where I got 52 farming though, I received another of the exact same ranging guild steps. Followed, after hitting 70 combat, with an even better medium step, just above the coal trucks. That's 3 steps within our chunks, in just over a day. Now, to have actually completed the first 2 steps, I would have had to have unlocked the ranging skill of course, which on account of the skill cape would be a terrible idea, but why couldn't I get this lucky with easy steps? Anyway, I didn't have to look at the offending clue for too long, as there's another maze random. This one adding another 210 air, 150 earth, 100 water and 90 fire runes. Followed by the dream back-to-back for random events of a second maze. And with a freaky forester straight after that, I really am getting the impression now that this is primarily a random event grind that I'm doing, with all those goblins, farmers and guards providing, essentially, a secondary source of runes on the side while I just wait for more randoms. Nice little milestone, there's 1000 air runes in the inventory. Plus, you guessed it, another lamp. Make that 2. Or 3.
Another one.
Just kidding. More mixed results on the clue front as well. This one's in the right area at least, but requires some items I have no hope of getting anytime soon. But, hallelujah, there's the first easy step I can complete. I've tagged it yellow just to help me remember which one it is and minimise the risk of forgetting it on a future random event.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
I couldn't help myself, okay? It's still quite early to have seen one of these, by the way. There are 2 completable steps out of a total of 164, and having only just hit 5,000 goblin kills, I've only seen 44 easy steps so far in total. Given how far we still have to go, it started to dawn on me, at around this point, what this grind was going to mean for the series. Despite the occasional moment of excitement, like hitting 43 prayer for protect from melee, or making small but meaningful progress against a longer goal, like 35 magic, these moments are getting pretty few and far between. Most of the time, it's just a matter of plant seeds, hit stuff, and pray for good randoms. A gameplay loop which, if I'm honest, probably doesn't make for the most gripping viewing experience. I mean, when world hopping to sell compost buckets is a highlight, you know you're in trouble. Now, I shouldn't complain too much, I suppose, especially given the number of neighbouring chunk accounts who are stuck with the far more arduous 99 smithing grind at present. But my current situation has nevertheless put me in 2 minds over what to do with all of this quote-unquote content. To be clear, I am genuinely taking a lot of enjoyment from this slower-paced approach to the game, but it has nevertheless got me thinking, what else could I be chipping away at on the side? So, here is my thought process. There are plenty of sweet corn seeds I could be growing, and if you cast your mind back to the cooking project last episode, you remember that they can be pretty decent experience. The farmhouse is far away though, and I'm lazy. So I suppose I could just use my main to light a fire for me. And if I can cook sweet corn on any old fire, then I suppose I could use it as a bonfire as well. And what if Jagex were to have proposed making bonfires a more attractive method of levelling firemaking? Well, you can see where this is going. But Fish Chunk, I hear you cry. Don't be a pillock, the firemaking cape is right next to you. And you'd be right, but so are a ton of permanent fires that would have unlocked firemaking as well, albeit in a far less convenient location, requiring a lengthy run from the trees after every inventory of logs just to use them. Now, feel free to quibble with me here, but personally I would see it as a bit gamey to lock firemaking behind a completely redundant permanent fire that I have no intention of using when unlocked. I could simply just use my main instead, beside whatever tree I'm chopping. So that's one thing to start doing as well. But, putting on my meta hat for a moment, if you cast your mind back to Pole 84, you'll remember that it took Jagex a fair while to implement this update in particular. So, having got a tad ahead of myself, and with things being a touch uneventful at the moment, let's start zooming, shall we? 17 fishing. Eagle Eye. 60 hit points. Genie Spam.
Oh, baby, a triple!
10,000 goblins. 18 fishing. A stupid hat. 54 farming. That's halfway on the grind. A maze. Remember I mentioned those skeletons in the Temple of Ikov dungeon? Well, there's 39 magic for Crumble Undead. Maze number 6. There's the final mime unlock. 40 magic. 41. 42. Bonus points if you noticed when in the episode I lost this clue step last time I had one on the ground. 55 farming. Maze number 7. The big 500 total level. Number 8. 15,000 goblins. 45 magic that I helpfully missed. Now, at this point I got a bit impatient. It had been over 5 weeks since the poll question about bonfires passed, so I picked up another bronze axe to start woodcutting while I worked my way through a small stack of watermelon seeds, firemaking or no firemaking. I also thought I'd have a shot at a technique a few of you mentioned in the last episode, where you can use an item you're gathering on the compost bin with some rather precise timing to deposit the produce while gathering more simultaneously. But in case you hadn't figured out why I'm spending my days farming potatoes and killing goblins instead of doing proper endgame content on my maxed main, it's because I'm not very good at the game. So naturally I found this whole watermelon bin thing rather challenging. Like, really quite challenging. Pretty embarrassingly so, if I'm honest. Distraction level, 56 farming. And that blasted update at last. Time to start burning stuff. Now goals-wise, the highest level wood I can gather at the moment is from willow trees, so that gives us a level 30 firemaking task. But it's been a hot minute, so... Firemaking goes predictably quickly. There's level 20 already. And level 25. Plus 50 prayer off regular bones. 41 woodcutting to use a rune axe. And our mini side goal, level 30 firemaking with 1 burnt willow log. Right, enough excitement for you. Back to our regularly scheduled content. Here's what 20,000 goblins looks like on the loot tracker. I said we'd be zooming. And of course all those gobbos means a lot of experience, so 47 magic. 60 defense, just in case we get blessed by the gods of dragon armor. 80 combat. Amazing. Not to forget the farmers, there's 10,000 of those as well. And 48 magic. Pretty much halfway on this other grind. Now in reality, yes, the remaining levels will go quicker, since as we've established, lamps are a huge factor in our XP gains for magic, and with every level we get, the XP rewards they dish out go up as well. So, all in all, that is a good amount of progress I think we've made this time. Totting it all up, there's over 38,000 NPCs now on the loot tracker. And more to come next time. Thank you for being so patient with the videos, especially during this current chunk. As I say every time, I can't promise the uploads to be especially speedy, but hopefully if you've made it this far in the video, then you've enjoyed this instalment. The next one will feature a chunk roll, I promise. So with that to look forward to, Fish Chunk out.